When you're good at sales, people look at you as an ATM. I was a $100,000 a month commission-only sales rep. One of very few in the space that's ever achieved that over a decent period of time. I had a 2-year-old. My wife was pregnant. I had $4,000 total. I had no job because I just quit. And that position was terrifying. But if I want to sound more concerned, it's like, hey man, how are you? Like, what have you been doing today? And from like that moment on, I was like, oh, I do it now. Everything changed. I was like, I do everything now. And I do it super aggressively. And like, I will refuse to be in the position I'm in right now. People have got money and there's a lot of money everywhere. When you're in sales, you can just go and get it.
Matt Ryder.
Hello.
The sniper.
That's me. Some have called me the world's best. Yeah. Not often, but it has happened.
Many confirmed kills? A few.
More than you can.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
Mate, you've got an interesting story.
Yeah, some would say.
Pretty interesting, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm 41 now, so I mean,
you don't look it.
You can't tell.
Yeah. Since you moved to Kensington, you look younger.
I haven't moved there yet. I'm on the way.
I want to cover off your story, and then I also want to cover off how you got into sales, how anyone can essentially get into sales if they have, the right will. I guess the earning capacity from that. Yeah. And then we're going to touch on some real estate stuff as well.
Yeah, I can walk you through like everything I did, and I think I wasn't good at sales.
You are now.
I'm okay.
My team thinks I'm terrible at sales now after you spoke at our retreat.
I mean, compared to me, you are. Right? although it's funny, right? Because like there's a lot of, I guess, these days like snobbery in sales. Because but the only measure of a sales rep is how many sales they make. And
Cash.
So by that measure, you're a fucking monster. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and there's so many different types of salespeople, and you're a charismatic, heavily influential kind of like product knowledge salesperson. So you're in it, you love it, you're passionate. That's non-transferable, right? It's a non-transferable type of sale.
Meaning that like other people couldn't do what I do because they're not me, or
because like you are selling as you're confident. You know what I mean? To seemingly no reason. Yeah. Right. right. But like you know it, you live it, you breathe it, and you take the action. So like you pull people along with you.
It's like influence.
Exactly. Yeah. And then there are people that, and that's really good when you're selling something that you really know, that you're really passionate about. But for like a professional salesperson that can bounce around and sell all different things, that's not like a super applicable way of selling, because you have to sort of live and breathe it. And if I want to come in and act like I live and breathe it and seem like I live and breathe it, I have to sell in a little bit of a different way. Because I could go into here and I'd be the top guy. I could go over, on Handler's team and be the top guy. I could go and sell at a bank and be the top guy. Yeah. Because you can figure it out. It's like a different way of doing it.
Which is that new, I'm assuming most people have seen this like high ticket closing thing, right? It's like go and learn how to sell, go and learn the skills of being a great salesperson, and then try and hop around to different offers and make heaps of cash. Yeah, I mean,
the irony is that everyone in that space is comically garbage. You know what I mean? And it's because they never actually had to sell anything. So like when I was in the military, and then when I got out, I became a personal trainer, right? You have 2 roads legally. It's copper personal trainer. Those are your only options, right?
Or a hitman or something.
Exactly, right. I was actually offered, poaching poachers in Africa, right? And you were paid by the head. Literally, you had to present the head to get paid.
So people who are trying to take out the elephants, you take out them.
And then I was like, but they're probably just trying to feed their families. You know what I mean? I was like, if it was me or a lion, if I guess like kill a lion or feed your family. Hot take, I'm killing the fucking lion.
For sure.
I don't give a shit. like fuck you, right? I'll kill everyone in this room to feed my kids, right? So you especially. Right? And so like I was like no, and then I got offered like shooting camels in Northern Territory. Because like I was like helicopter qualified, and so there's not.
What are like camels? Fucking.
Oh man, there's like
too many camels.
Dude, there's herds of millions of wild camels out there, just in the middle of fucking nowhere, right there. And so they just gotta the government pays to have them fucking slaughtered. If you didn't know that, that's where your tax dollars are going.
There you go.
And I was offered all kinds of weird stuff, and I sort of made a distinct decision. I didn't want to spend my life with a gun in my hand because, I was in special operations and I was in snipers, and so I was good at that. But I was like, this is not a fulfilling thing. And as I've gotten older, I've realized, we were probably the bad guys.
There's more to life than killing people.
Yeah, exactly.
But the interesting thing is, regardless if you're in special ops or you were, in retail or whatever it was, you essentially made that switch from being on what essentially was a fixed income. I mean, you got paid different amounts to do different things, obviously. And then you moved into an industry where you have an unlimited earning potential.
Yeah. And PT is, I think, fitness is a really good like first foray into that because it's like a huge TAM. You know, it's one of the only things you can sell people more than once. You know, there's new people that need it every day, and there's just a constant demand, and it's sort of recession proof in a way.
TAM is total addressable market for people who don't know.
That's true.
Which means there's lots of fat people that you can sell.
There are. There's more every day, right? McDonald's is just churning them out.
And then you can resell them when they get skinny.
Yeah, you know,
and they go and get fat again.
Yeah, and like, you know, there's different niches and goals, and you can sort of have a huge clientele, and your hourly rate is outrageous. For, like you do an 8-week course with AIF or whatever, and you can charge $100 an hour. I mean, to be a tradie and get to charge $100 an hour, like you have to be qualified at the shithouse to get that. Whereas, you know, being a PT is one of the easiest ways to live at the beach and make $100K a year. You know, and so I did that, and then sort of realized I was like, okay, so I went down the education path. Realized that the better I got, it didn't really equate to one of like getting more business. I would hold the business, but I didn't get it. And then when I opened my own gym, I thought like, if you build it, they'll come type thing, and they just didn't. And so we had to figure out.
So you didn't just open the doors and people just walk in?
No. Dude,
like, hey, you're the guy that got offered to shoot the camels.
Yeah. I even was dressed up in like a gorilla suit in Bondi Junction, like giving out body fat assessments, right? Like just
that was the point where you're like, fuck, I should have taken the camel job.
Exactly. I was just like, Jesus, oh how the mighty have fallen. And so so did all that, and then I was like, did some courses on like sales and marketing. I loved the marketing side. I was really into it. So I had a business partner, and so I was like, hey, you do the sales, I do the marketing. So I did all the meta ads and all that kind of stuff. And then from there, as it grew, we sort of both had to go into the sales, and I was terrible at it. I just didn't like it. I think it was because I had a distinct lack of empathy, because I'm sort of like my tendency is sort of more sociopathic, which is why I was sort of in the job that I was. Having kids and getting older, I've like softened a lot, so I feel feelings now. You know, I'm sort of like actually have some emotional range.
You're less sociopathic.
Whereas back then I was like, what do you mean?
What do you mean you're upset?
You're fat. Like, you know, it's like it wasn't like the most motivating sales style. And then, you know, over the course of time, I sort of like when you're a sniper, you have your data, and you make all your adjustments based off data. And if you don't know your data in that world, you're a total piece of shit. Like, people hate you. Right. And so I was like, oh, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'll write down everything that happens, and then I'll try and find the patterns.
So you've got, like, interchangeable skills, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Like, what sort of data are you tracking as a sniper? Like, the...
Oh, well, I mean, like, if you're going to do, like, a cold barrel shoot, you know, facing directly north, you know, and it's a high elevation, and it's cold. It's a very different shot than facing south, low elevation, high humidity. Because, like, there's a lot of factors that affect the bullet, the gun. You know, like, if the barrel's cold, the propellant doesn't go as fast, so that the bullet doesn't go as fast, so it drops earlier. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, right?
Yeah, like, so, fuck.
You know, but if you're trying to shout someone in the face at, you know, 1,500 meters, like, there's not a lot of error, right? So...
Man, I can't shoot. I was using a gun once in Tamworth at Emma's cousin's property, and we had cans on rocks, literally, like 20 meters away.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it.
Well, you know. Not everyone's built to be a man.
I wasn't tracking my data.
You wouldn't track your data.
That's the issue.
That's a cold barrel.
Yeah, I think the scope was out or something.
Yeah. A good cross and flames are tools. That's the way it works. It definitely doesn't shoot straight.
It's the dialer.
Yeah. So you know, went through and I started tracking stuff, and then I was going, okay, like, I need to know how many sales I want to make, how many conversations I need to have, and you just sort of go down to like the activity requirement. And so I just started doing that. And then as we grew, and I went into a partnership and ended up being a part owner of like 18 gyms. My job was just to like basically go into the new gyms and then grow them quickly, and then get out and then do it again. So all I did was sell 8 hours a day. Right. There was 5-6 days a week on the phone. I used to get a CSV file emailed to me, and it was like stupid targets. It was like 40% lead to sale. Like, that was the actual target,
which is very, very high.
It's like insane.
For context, ours is like 1.
Yeah, but yeah. And I didn't know how stupid it was, and like none of us did, because we're all kind of flying by the seat of our pants, you know. And so we ended up doing that, and then I sort of just cracked the shits with it because there were decisions being made that I didn't agree with, and then I was just like, fuck this, I'm out. And then I started like a sales agency for gyms, and so that kind of grew out, and then I was doing the sales for gyms around the world, so I was time zone hopping. I was working 16, 17 hours a day.
So like a done-for-you sales model, essentially. Like
that they would generate the leads, send them to me, and I would call them. And I was like using Skype and all kinds of random shit, and I was just kind of like trying to figure it out. That grew really fast because there's a real need for it. And then I just started doing more and more and more sales. And then when I got into the high-ticket world, I had done 8 years of full-time selling.
And the difference for people who don't know, like high ticket sales essentially just means you're selling an expensive product.
You're selling air.
Yeah.
You're selling information, right? Which is like valuable information, but the value of which is completely subjective.
Yeah.
And based on somebody implementing it and all that kind of stuff. So, you got a $30,000 business coaching package where you're going to get access to a course, a PDF, and, a good mindset, right? So, you learn how to sell that. And although it's valuable because you can get tremendous returns from it. Like, I paid my sales coach, like the first sales, I paid him $40,000. I had $50,000 in the bank. And I remember my wife going to me and go, where the fuck's my money gone? And I was like, I gave it to this dude named Jeremy. I feel like it's going to work out. I was just like, all right, you seem good at this.
It worked out though, right?
Yeah, it worked out. I mean,
implementation though.
Yeah, you got to do it. But like all that, it's just about time and longevity and seeing the patterns and being able to figure it out to get really good at sales. But most of the time, you can be a really successful sales rep by being pretty dog shit on the phone. You can just like hustle the living bejesus out.
Just be
right?
consistent.
Just do the work. Work 8 hours a day. Like it's revolutionary shit. Right,
hard stuff.
But that's one of the things. You can make a shitload of money in sales, even if you're not super gifted. If you are just willing to work a full day.
Because the difference between sales, I suppose, and other roles is that if you work 8 hours a day in your plumbing gig or as a person in the defence force, you get paid for 8 hours a day, regardless if you sit down and do nothing or you are a hustler.
Yeah.
Where in a sales world, you're paid essentially on outcome. You might get a small base, but you're not going to make much money if you do nothing. And generally, if you do nothing, you're not getting any actions or doing any actions.
It's a high risk, high reward.
Yeah.
Right. And so, for me, I've always turned bases down. One of the first sales gig I ever, I didn't get it. And so I remember I just hounded the guy. And I was like, hey, how much? I ended up, after 2 weeks of me hounding this dude, I said, how much do you pay for a sales call? He said, $400. I said, I'll give you $400 for everyone I don't close. And he was like, well, I mean, that's, all right.
How's that for an irresistible offer, huh?
Yeah. And it was a $2,000 commission for a $30,000 sale. And I made $6,000 in the first week.
So you're essentially working out, if I close one, that pays for 5 that I don't close.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wasn't planning on not closing anybody. So, right? So I was like, I made 6 sales and made $12,000 commission the first week. And I was like, oh shit, this is different.
Yeah.
Because I was used to selling fitness programs, and making $50 a sale.
How did you make the transition though? To go from being in the defence force to then going straight into sales, what did that look like for people
it was the PT component, right? So I kind of learned... the PT molded. I was sort of selling full time before I realized I was a sales rep. Because I just kind of fell into that role because nobody was doing it in the company. And I was like, well, someone's got to fucking be the dude who's responsible for this. And I was like, it might as well be me.
So essentially, to think about it in a way, if you're a mechanic, for example, you take your car into the mechanic shop. The mechanic obviously fixes your car, but they also have then a sales portion of their role, which is like, hey. Yeah.
There's a unicorn in your Johnson rod.
Yeah,
you got to replace the whole engine. You got to get those unicorns
new
out.
brake pads. That's the sales portion of the role, which is essentially you in PT, right? You were actually training people, and then I'm assuming there was the upsells to the supplements and the fucking hey, you should train 5 times a week instead of 3 times a week, and all that type
you
of shit.
just learn that you actually get it's like with exercise. If you do it, it'll work. I don't care what you do. If you just move more and eat healthier, you'll be a healthier, fitter person.
Yeah.
And so it's why people who shit on fitness enforcers man, how many people are you helping? Right? With your fucking 4 clients down at Clip Valley Beach, motherfucker. You know what I mean? You're fucking changing the world, dude.
It's true.
Yeah, but you know how to Olympic lift. Well done to you. And so if you're looking at helping the most amount of people, if you can have a small impact on those people and just go hey, how about you just stop drinking yourself to death every weekend? Be that's a huge positive. So sales will get you a lot further in that than what being a really skilled coach will. Because people don't need a highly skilled coach for anything 90% of the time. They just need someone who's they respect enough to actually start doing some things.
To take action.
And yeah, exactly. And so sales is that transition from doing nothing to doing something. And that's kind of, I like that role. It's a good place to be. I'm not going to pretend I'm here to fucking help and change the world. No. Right? But I like doing that part. It's a good catalyst.
Getting someone out of essentially doing nothing to taking action. And then the fulfillment part of that then goes on to someone else. Tell the story that you told us at Retreat around you were selling in the gyms, and this was the thing that changed the mindset of you went and met with this person.
It's I was always thought sales was a bit icky. you know. And I remember this big fat dude came in, and he was like, I don't know, he's like 100, he's like 50 kilos overweight. And he's telling me, he's like, I need to lose weight. And I was like, yeah, sweet. You need this much weight loss. It's going to cost this much money. And he sort of just gave me, he's like, oh, I just got to go and like work out the times. And I was like, mate, the time was like 40 kilos ago, mate. That was the time. Now it's like, let's do this, you know. And he was sort of like, oh, yep, sweet. I'll get back to you, and I'm going to go think about it. And all he thought about was fuck donuts, right?
And he left there, and he's like, fuck that guy.
Yeah. And I saw him like 6 months later, and the dude was like 70 kilos overweight. And I was like, oh, that was just my inability, because that person had shown the glimmer of motivation.
Because he was there, right?
He was there.
Yeah.
And it was like my job was to create the argument of, hey, how about you do something to not die as fast? Right? You get one life. Like, let's live it, champ, right? And I couldn't do that, so I was like, oh, fuck me. Like, that's on me. That dude has shitty habits.
That 20 kilos is my 20 kilos, you know, that he put on.
Exactly. Like, that's my habit. Because, like, I was a fat kid, right? I was told it was my genetics and all that kind of stuff and all these other things. Like, my parents sort of still believe to this day, right? Then they point to the auntie that's not related to me by blood, right? You know what I mean? It's all the, you know, but like you sort of tell yourself stories, right? And so I was like, oh, that's on me. And so I was like, I need to get better at convincing these people, and me showing off my, you know, my technical prowess with training is not going to do that, because that's not ultimately like what matters to them. And so I started going down the road of, I want to get better at sales and convincing people to actually start.
And influence, right?
Like,
that's
and
the thing.
Influencing people.
And that's, I think, what you said before around, like, sales generally is looked as like, fucking the sleazy salesperson, right? Like the car salesman, the real estate agent, whatever it is. But I think in that example, that person genuinely needed someone to be like, hey, you're a fat motherfucker, or whatever it is. You need to do something, because if you don't, the outcome is death before 50. You know?
And I think especially with something like fitness, it's a good place to start, because, man, I'd love people to argue with me in the comments, but like, you know, there is
they will.
There's no downside to going to the gym and eating a bit healthier. You know, you can argue sales coaching programs, you can argue whatever, like, you know, and I don't think people should use sleazy sales tactics, but I think one of the best things about sales is you never have to lie. And it's like
state the facts, tell the truth.
It's a very freeing experience, and I like that, because I'm very forthright, and I tell the truth. And if people like it, fantastic. And I think you present it in a respectful way. But I think if someone is doing something that is antithetical to what they want, you know, then you should tell them, and they should have the opportunity to either I'll course correct, or like, well, fuck it. And then it's like, well, you really don't want it anyway.
That's right.
So at least admit to yourself that you don't want it, or you're like, you want it and you haven't hit rock bottom because you have to touch the oven to know it's hot.
What have you seen the best transitions from careers into sales are? Because you've worked with fucking, I don't know, thousands and thousands of salespeople around, right?
Yeah, fitness is a good one.
Right.
Anything door to door, anything where you have a high touch point with people.
Right. So communication style of role.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, customer service, you know, where you have to deal with complaints all the time. And it's sort of like, you know, I think one of the things that makes sales difficult for people is, I think this day and age, you know, I'll sound like the old guy, is there's a distinct lack of human-to-human communication. And I never had a dating app. I met my wife, we've been together for 16 years.
Right.
And so she was 21, I was 25. There was no dating apps or nothing. And when I went out,
where'd you meet?
We met at a course, at the PT course.
Dead set.
Yeah, I stood up day one and said, I was in the Army still. I was getting out, and that was at the course that I was doing. I said, hey, my name is Matt. I'm a Special Forces sniper, and yes, ladies, I am single. Right?
Sales right there.
Right, sales. Smoking hot blonde was like, what's going on? And we went on our first date 3 days later.
Right.
And we've been together ever since. And so, you know, I think if you don't, you know, from what I can see, and like I see a lot of like, you know, young salespeople, and they just don't know how to speak to people, and that's the biggest barrier. And I think that that's also the biggest thing that can like change your life the most, is going through that process and learning how to speak to people, and having sort of weird conversations.
It is true, eh? Like when you speak to a lot of people these days, it's like in person, actually meet them. It's like really awkward.
Oh, they're horrific. You know, like what do I do with my hands?
They don't look at you, and like.
And they can't read what's happening, you know. And I think a lot of that's because dating apps. Like that's what I think, because I used to go out and like put myself out there and be like,
hey, I'm Matt.
Yes.
I'm a sniper. Yes, I am single.
Yes. Yeah.
Before you meet your wife, obviously.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, but I used to go over. It's so funny. Guys just don't know how to approach women. They don't know how to, they don't know how to present themselves well. They don't know how to like talk to somebody. They don't know how to network. Like I'm sure, like when you go to an event, like networking, you're probably good at it, right? You go there, you talk to people, and you
just ask questions like, "Hey, I'm Jack. What do you do?"
Exactly. But you actually have to there's an element of like I'm going to reach out. And so vulnerability is like a handshake. You only get it if you give it, and you have to reach out, go, hey, I'll be vulnerable. And that's like, I'll tell you information that you don't know about me, because there can be a power dynamic thing where now I know info about you that you don't know about me, and that can be kind of a weird thing for some people.
It's very true.
Yeah. But I think, and if you can learn sales and you can learn how to communicate yourself effectively, it makes you a better parent, makes you a better partner. Like my kids, my kids are being taught, they're 6 and 9. If they want something and they come to me and they're like, I want this, and I go, that's not how you ask that.
So you're teaching them communication.
I go, I go, like, what do you want? And they're like, I want this. And I'm like, okay, so how do you get it? Like, figure out the puzzle, and communicate yourself in a way that, makes me want it, makes me want to give it to you.
Have you seen that Chinese guy on I don't know, maybe he's not Chinese, but
There's
he's like
of them.
of Asian background. What's his name? Will something? And he doesn't talk about sales. He just talks about
Will Tong.
Is that what his name is?
I think it's, yeah.
And he just talks simply about communication.
Yeah.
And he talks heavily about like people who have immigrated to. I think he's in Australia, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. And how to like get out of their sort of slang that they have. Where like Chinese people sound different when they speak English to someone who's born in Australia. And
how to enunciate.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's and just the way that he talks.
Yes,
makes you
very engaging.
Yeah, and he seems so intelligent when all he's doing is saying normal words, but makes them normal words sound so different.
Yeah, and just like how you present yourself and how you say things, and people don't realize how incredibly influential intonation is. There's a great children's book called No, Mr. Magoo, This Is For You.
Right.
And it's the exact same thing. It just says, no, Mr. Magoo. No, Magoo, this is for you. Right? And it's like Magoo's the dog. And then it changes the punctuation, the bold, and the spacing.
Right. So you can say the same thing.
And then it has a different picture. But you understand exactly what is being said by the picture and the intonation of the word. No, Magoo, this is for you. No, Magoo, this is for you. Right? And so just that intonation is like, oh, he was wondering if that was for him. This is for you. No, Magoo, this is for you. It's this one. And so it's small things like that. Like if I ask you a question like, well, Jack, like, why is that important to you now, though? Or if I go, oh, Jack, like, why is that important to you now, though? That little change of intonation, I can predict how you'll answer it. And so I can sort of get you to answer things in ways that I want you to answer, that's based on outcomes that I'm looking for, without it seeming like I'm doing that. And that can seem very manipulative, and I guess if used in the wrong way, it definitely could be. But it's about being able to communicate yourself effectively, because I want you to answer in terms of time frame. Why is that important to you now, though? And so that slight pause, because you grew up in a Western society, I'm placing the importance on the now. And so you're going to answer it, well, I've just been thinking about doing this for a while, And so, like, people are highly influenced in that state. And I think that, to me, is fascinating. And it means that you can go into a situation and you can understand how to communicate in a way where it makes sense to get the answers that you're looking for and get what you want. And it even goes down to, like hotel reception, you call them helpful. Label them as helpful. Labeling is a very effective tool. Oh, you've been so helpful. Thank you so much. You guys are so helpful. You come the next day. Hey, you guys have been so helpful. But could I ask a favor? Could I have a late checkout? Oh, okay. Right? Like, because they want to maintain the
They want to be helpful.
Yeah, they want to be helpful.
Yeah,
And so it's all these little things that you can do to sort of influence your way through life. And there's lots of good people out there, Never Split the Difference guy.
Chris Voss. That was the first sales book I ever read.
Yeah, it's a great one. There's another one called like Oren Klaff, Flip the Script, who does a lot of like large
Similar,
deals.
is it?
Yeah, well, he talks about like, like different ways of selling and different things around like creating hyper authority really quickly, and little techniques that you can do where if you're going to explain something complicated, do it very fast, right? Because the faster you do it, the easier it is for you. And then people will sit back and go, oh, fuck, Jack knows what he's talking about. You know? And so, like, oh, this is such a
I don't even do that on purpose. I just talk really quickly. And people are like, fuck, that guy's smart.
Yeah. Well, that is the thing as well, you know, like pacing of what you talk about. Because if you talk naturally fast and then you slow down in certain points, you'll create an enormous effect of importance.
Mm.
And so, like, my normal talking speed is a lot faster than what I talk right now. When I'm talking to, you know, people that I like, for example, right? No, but if I'm not like in a presentation, like if I talk really quickly,
right?
But in order to get my point across, I talk in a more kind of baseline speed, so that if I talk faster or if I talk slower, it has more of an effect.
And your tonality as well, right? Like that's one of the most important things.
Yeah. So like if I want to sound more curious, I can just I just talk to the back of the throat up a little bit. Hey man, how's it going? How are you today? You know, like what have you been doing? Or if I want to sound more concerned, it's like, hey man, how are you? Like what have you been doing today?
Everything all right?
Everything okay? Right? You know, so you just talk a little bit from the base, and you can slow it down even more. You can go, hey man, how are you? Like what have you been doing today? And then it's sort of like, oh, like that's very off-putting because it's very confusing as to what I mean.
And the way that you ask something, like you were saying before, you can say the exact same words, but have different tonality. And what was you said it was a different enunciation?
A different intonation.
Intonation.
Yeah. So like the intonation.
For people who didn't finish school like me, what's that mean? Yeah,
so it's like you know, if you look at it like when you're writing it out, it'd be like the ellipses, you know, like the three dots, like for the pausing, and then you might bold a word to put more emphasis on it. And so when I would tell people to write a script, for example, I write it like that. Because I want to be able to look at it and know exactly what I'm going to say. Because if I'm looking for patterns in sales, and when you're dealing with people, the difficulty is that like everyone will answer differently, but different words, but they will answer in patterns. Like if I say, why is that important to you now, though, the vast majority will answer with time frame. So I have to be able to remove the words they use and look at the baseline of like, okay, they answered with time frame, but I need to be able to like ask everything the same way every time to find the pattern, which is
create predictability.
That's the difficulty in sales. And once you can do that, and what I did when I was like when I was getting into high ticket sales and I started making like $15K a month, $20K a month, I was $100,000 a month commission only sales rep. Right? One of very few in the space that's ever achieved that over a decent period of time. And I went through every single line in my script over the course of about 6 months, and I had the intonation perfect for every line.
And that would have come from the detail-orientated style of work being sniper, right?
Yeah, because I sort of realized, like, oh, I've got an opportunity here. So I was getting paid $2,000 a sale, which is like ridiculous. I'd never seen money like that before. I mean, the most money I ever made as a PT was, I probably made $200 as a PT.
Right.
You know what I mean? But then, like, when I was doing the gym stuff, I was making like 80 because it was like, you know, for the fucking equity play type thing, which never ended up happening.
So when you left the Defence Force, you took a step down? In income?
Well, I mean, so I took a year off to sort of learn how to be a human again.
Yeah.
And then I became a PT. And I was like a pretty successful PT. I was probably making the same money as a PT.
Okay. Yeah.
But then when I opened the gyms, you sort of like, you know, that business owner mode where you're like, I make no money in exchange for something that may or may not ever happen. Yeah. So I did that for a long time. Got myself into debt. You know, it cost me like $90,000 of my own money on an 18% overdraft when I opened the gym. That took me a long time to climb out of that fucking hole.
Yeah.
And then when I left the gyms, I sort of just walked away from them. I was still in debt from them, and I remember this was probably 7 years ago.
Right. So not that long ago.
It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like 2018. And me and my wife, we had $4,000 in the bank, and our rent was $6,000, right? Which is like not even a crazy. It was like a half decent house in Kensington.
Yeah.
Right. And it was like pretty small.
That's where the Kensington connection comes from.
Yeah.
You live there.
Yeah. There was we had tons of people over there, and so my wife was pregnant with my second, and we were like super broke, like so broke that we sold a car and didn't pay off the finance, right? Like. There's a couple months there where I was like, you know what I mean?
Is that car still around? Yeah, we love the car. Yeah. I just don't drive it anymore.
Yeah, it was like a personal one. Anyway, and so I was like really, and I remember just like having this fucking conversation with this dude, because I was like, this is just before I left the gyms. And I was like, man, next year's going to be the fucking year. And like, but with the gyms, and he was saying the same thing. And I remember like having this, I've had this conversation 4 times.
Next year never comes.
And I was like, oh, I do it now. And from like that moment on, I was like, oh, I do it now. Everything changed. I was like, I do everything now, and I do it super aggressively, and like I will refuse to be in the position I'm in right now. And that position was terrifying. I had a 2-year-old. My wife was pregnant, 8 months pregnant. I had $4,000 total. I had no job because I just quit, right? No income. And rent was due. And I was like, and I had a car that I sold that I didn't pay off. Right?
So it was grim.
Like, it was
and a lot of people would be in a similar position.
Yeah.
Like it's not an unusual position.
And so I called everyone that I knew that owned a gym. Everyone. Because I've been a gym owner for a long time, so I knew people. And I was like, hey, I'll do your sales. It was $375 a week base.
Right.
And $25 a sale.
Just selling memberships, essentially.
Yeah. And so I signed up like 6 gyms. And I just started calling the living fuck out of everybody. And then I was like, okay. And so then I was like, well, I've maxed out my times in Australia. I need more work. So I was like, sweet, gyms in the US. I called friends, everyone.
So essentially like you were working, say, 8 till 5 or 8 till 6 in Australia, and then
I was working till like midnight
in the US.
Yeah, and then UK as well. So because of the time zone. So I was doing the sales for like maybe 8 different gyms myself.
Right.
And I was doing like 2 hours a day per gym, making about 2 to 3 sales per day per gym. I was pretty good at it. I could do a sale in 15 minutes. And so I just did that. And then that got me sort of out of a hole. We then moved. I bought my parents' house off them at like an arm's length transaction. So basically it was $710,000 for a giant house in Perth, right? You know what I mean? It was a 1,000 square meter block. And
pretty close to Kensington.
Yeah. And so because we just couldn't afford Sydney, couldn't afford it. And so managed to get like a second tier lender. It was arm's length, so my parents were like basically they funded the deposit.
Guarantor,
essentially. Yeah. And so I bought it off them, and then from there that freed them up to then downsize a bit.
Yeah.
And then I had a private mortgage with them. And then from there, that sort of gave me the freedom to where my bills were significantly reduced. I had a house, so I was in the market. So I was like, sweet, this sort of ticks a few boxes.
Yeah.
And it gave me the freedom to work 18 hours a day and sort of not have the enormous financial stress of just having to pay bills. Because I figured out I could make enough money to get that done. Maybe not pay tax, you know what I mean, on time, but I could figure that out. And then over the course
you are great people anyway.
Yeah, they're super awesome people. Love you. And then from there, over the course of the next year, I got the business to about $200,000 a month.
And this was essentially just you doing done-for-you sales for other gyms?
Yeah, well, I transitioned out of the gyms about halfway through that. After that guy paid me $12,000 for a week, I fired every gym immediately.
Right.
And I was like, now I do this. And so I went to high-ticket sales, and that's where I started sort of doing that. And that's when I hired Jeremy as a sales coach, and then he asked me to
Was Jeremy your sales coach?
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's the guy I gave $40,000.
You said Jeremy. I wasn't going to ask a question, but there you go.
Yeah, and then he asked me to be his sales guy. And I was like, yep. And then he asked me to be CEO, and then he asked me to be a business partner. And by the time that happened, Sales Sniper was doing $1 million a month.
Which was the business that you ended up doing before?
Yeah, Sales Sniper kept going. So Sales Sniper got up to about $2.5 million a month.
Right.
And at its peak between 7th level and Sales Sniper was about $5 or $6 million a month between the two of them.
It's a big operation.
Big operation. And I was running both. I was still like the sort of main sales guy on Sales Sniper, selling all the accounts, and then transitioned out and sort of focused on 7th level, and then sold that back to Jeremy at the end of 23, and then started the dialer.
Of which we use.
Yeah.
Dialer.io.
Slapping, right? Which is
Connect rates through the roof.
Through the roof. You guys are 87% for the month.
So the transition from broke, living in Kensington, sold the car to multi-million-dollar a month business, it was relatively short.
Couple years.
4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the power of sales, right? Or a business in which you are in control of the outcome. The more you put in, the more you get.
Well, it was sales. It was because because I was good at sales, and but I was only good at sales because I worked harder than all the other sales reps.
And it would have been a element of desperation, right?
Oh, mate.
When you got no money, you're like, what the fuck?
I knew I could do hard things. Like I was special operations. I was like, I know that if my wife said to me when I paid $40,000 to Jeremy, she was like, I know that whatever you do, if you do it 100%, you'll kill it. So she just goes, do whatever you need to do, and I'll take care of the rest. And so I was like, sweet. She was like, I trust you. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, that's all I need. My wife trusts me. Like, she's got this. She's got the kids. Like, I will. And I was like, sweetie, I'm going to work 18 hours a day for the next year, and you just have to be okay with that. And she's like, don't worry, I got you. And we talked about it. We had the conversation. And so I worked literally 18 hours a day. I would work until about midnight, 1 a.m. And then I would like wake up at 5 or 6, and then I would start work again, and then I'd have like an hour and a half break in the middle of the day, have a sleep, have some food, get back into it, and then I would take like from 5 to 7 off, and that's when I would like
time with the kids.
And then I would get back in the office at 7, work till midnight, 1 a.m., go to bed.
And that was doing calls in another time zone, essentially.
Yeah, because I was doing stuff all over the world. And I said, if I do this right, I think that I can build so much brand momentum that like nobody will be able to stop me. And there was no competition in terms of like dudes who could do what I could do. And so I just kind of went for it and started doing content and talking about the things that I was doing. And then, started getting outreach. And my first big client was Vince DelMonte, big old OG in the fitness space. My next big client was Ryan Serhant. So I ran his sales team for 3 years. And I'm friends with Ryan. Like, I mean, as much as you can be friends with Ryan. Right?
Busy guy, right?
He's a busy guy. I mean, I talked to him 2 weeks ago, right, on the phone. And then when he comes to Australia, like, we have dinner, But I've worked with him for 3 years. He's a fucking,
savage.
Oh, mate. Like, when I realized I'll never be as wealthy as him was when I met him. I was like, oh, I'm not willing to do that. Like, you can have that. Like, that's crazy. But he's a savage. He's a great dude. And then I started getting like, when you're good at sales, people look at you as an ATM.
Because when you're running a business, the reality is sales is the most important thing. I mean, marketing brings in the leads to sell.
Yeah.
But without sales, you don't have an organization. Whether you have a sales team or whether you have a product that, sells itself essentially through a click of a button. Without it, it's the lifeblood of a business.
Yeah. And so I just ended up getting phone calls from everyone. Like everyone in that sort of space, I've worked with the Hormozis, I've worked with Bronson and Bradley and all these dudes. And I've sort of looked at things in back ends and fixed things and sort of worked sales because, I've done a lot more sales than most people because I was a full-time rep for a long time. Yeah. And not many dudes who are in that sort of industry were ever actually really a full-time rep. They sort of might have done it for a year or two and then transitioned teaching
into
people.
Running the business or teaching.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's interesting.
So if you were, the person today who I always harp on, grow your income. You grew your income, to many millions a month. What's the transition look like? If you aren't a guy that's in fitness, for example, or someone who's got the sales background, like I was in construction, I wanted to start a business, but the transition to that business was to become essentially a salesperson. I was a buyer's agent, had to sell the services.
That is the best way to do it.
Yeah. So to transition out of your role into a business where... Or a role where you're doing some selling. Yeah,
I think if you can learn on the job, I think it's fantastic. So if you can, and you're going to have to be the guy doing the sales for a while, and so you might as well learn that skill set. Yeah, it doesn't mean you have to go deep. I don't think anyone should. You need to go deep in the matrix on selling unless you're going to be a full-time sales guy. But if you're going to be the sales guy for your business, you will eventually transition out of that. So you need to be good enough
to be able to teach people when they come in.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think that going into a business that's like the business of which you want to run, because, you want to know if you like it, first and foremost. If you don't like it, it's going to be very difficult. And then from there, just like be excellent. And being excellent doesn't mean that you start off getting an amazing outcome. It means that you start off doing all the activities and doing the things required of someone who is excellent. Like Steph Curry is Steph Curry because he was willing to be Steph Curry before that was cool. And then continue that activity. And I think like the reason why, it's probably a bit of a controversial take, but most people are not successful just because they just don't give a fuck enough to be that. And it's
their life isn't shit enough to take the action to get out of that shit position, right?
Yeah. And like, I understand that like some people are born on third base and they hit a home run. It's a bit easier, right? Yeah. But you still got to hit a home run. So you still have to do the action required. You still got to get up to the plate and you got to swing. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, from what I can see, it's like they think they have more time than what they do. And my best friend died in 2010 in a helicopter crash. His name's Benjamin Chuck. And I remember like that rocked me to the core because like I remember getting the phone calls in Westfield and I like collapsed. right? Because I was like, it was just, you're in your 20s, and I've had people die before because the military, but like when he died, it really affected me.
Because it was sort of like the closest person to you
like
that
I lived with
before?
him for 4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
and then I got a phone call, he goes over to the gang, we had a fucking huge argument like fucking, young dudes do, and then he died, and I never got a chance to make it right, and that was shit, and that sat with me for a long time. And I remember, like he was a great dude, and he didn't get a chance to keep going, and I was like, I don't want to be a piece of shit. And it was like, if you think you have time, the reality is you really don't. I can walk out of here today and get hit by a bus. Like, so.
And they fucking drive faster here,
They
too.
do, mate. This is a dangerous place, right? This is the fucking streets of Paddo, mate. You know what I mean? Right? I think people are sort of throwing this opportunity away, There's just the sheer stats of you even being alive are incredibly low, and it sounds like a trope or whatever at this point, but it really is. I
think Gary Vee talks about it. They worked it out. It was like one in 400 trillion or something.
Dude, you don't get a second go. I mean, listen, maybe you're Hindi and you think you do, whatever, right? But like you like in your consciousness, you don't get round two. So if you're like waiting for something, like I just don't know what you're waiting for. Like, are you waiting for the universe to present the opportunity? Like, they already have. The doors are unlocked, mate. You just kind of got to go through them. And it is hard, and you probably won't succeed the first few times. But, and I'm not saying that everyone can go out there and be a fucking billionaire. But you can, and success, I think, is a weird metric because, like, if you wanted to be the world's greatest father, like, that would be a huge success, but you have to pick a thing that you want to be good at, and especially men, I think, because, like, we're so driven by purpose,
And the younger you do it, the easier it is because the less life baggage you have.
Yeah, you can take swings.
Literally.
Yeah, like, I had to take a swing with a child, a pregnant wife, debt, and, but when I wanted to be special operations, I just told everyone to go fuck themselves. And like I was like, I'm not like I remember I would like speak to girls and like I was like, I don't want a girlfriend. I was like,
I am single and a sniper, but not
no, it's just like I was like,
yet.
I have courses to do, and you're not as important as that. So like I have a singular focus and nothing else matters. I have no obligations to anyone.
Pretty hard to say that when you got a wife and a kid, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Going to your kids. Come on, mate. Fuck. I got a fucking call to make, dude. And so you can take these swings and you can do things that I think are pretty cool. And if you just realize that like you're probably going to die, and it's probably like going to be sooner than what you think, because everyone thinks they're going to live forever, and with my high level of income and advanced in modern sciences, 245, 250 is possible, right? But
let's hope.
Yeah. Right, but
I mean, those fucking buses, that's really the only thing.
Yeah.
They'll get you.
Yeah, exactly, right? But yeah, so, just do shit. And I think even if you swing and you miss, at least you had a swing.
And the best thing about sales as well is that it literally transfers into everything else, because sales is really just the transfer of confidence and its communication, like you said, which then does go into starting your own business, which then does go into heading up someone else's organization, for example.
Exactly.
So it opens up the doors to so many other things.
Yeah, and I think and there is no university degree for sales. There is no formal education. There's no barrier of entry. You can be literally anyone, and I've had dudes with crazy thick accents and sell in English and do really, really well. And it's really just a case of anyone can do it. There is not a single person. If you have an IQ over 85, you'll be totally fine. If you have an IQ under 85, like you can't really be taught anything. That's like what the military deems as like you can't be taught basic processes.
Really?
You're just more of a liability than anything else.
How do we track that as like when we're employing people?
You'll know, right? like lovely, right? But no. But it's also quite rare under 85. But if you have and you don't have to be a people person. You don't have to have the gift of the gab. If anything, those people sort of struggle in like to get past certain levels of salesdom because they try and talk their way around it, but it's not really how it works.
Yeah.
And so it's a process driven activity that anyone can learn, and it makes you better at literally everything in life, from being a parent to being a partner, because you can actually communicate yourself well. You can ask curious questions. You can use your tonality to like not sound like you're angry when you're like, okay, like what do you mean by that? Like where's that coming from? So you can actually like.
And your partner goes, well, are you pissed off? What the fuck are you angry about?
Yeah.
And you have an argument. You're like, I didn't want to have an argument.
Yeah. And so, it just makes everything better. And I think the transition from that into any other field is positive. And if you meet, most CEOs came from sales. most business owners and entrepreneurs had sales roles, and the reason for that is you learn that rejection is not rejection. If someone doesn't buy something off you, it is not a value judgment on you as a human. It's that they just didn't want to give the business that you work for money. That's the long and the short of it. And then you realize that people no-show. It's like it's not personal. So you stop taking.
It's like the guy you used that example the other day. It's like when the guy cuts you off in traffic. Does the guy hate you, or is he just randomly cutting someone off in traffic?
Yeah. What if he has to take a shit? Like, man, you ever take a shit in the car? It's stressful, bro. I'll cut the shit out of anybody. But they don't even know it's
as
in the
humans,
car.
we take things personally, like everything, right? We try to give everything a meaning when it's like things just happen.
Yeah, things just happen.
And the awesome thing about sales is there is just an unlimited amount of opportunity out there.
Oh, man, it's crazy. And, it is, if you're good at sales, you're recession-proof. There is no economic environment in which you cannot thrive because
everything always needs to be sold. There is something that you can sell.
Exactly. And also, like, if you're good at sales, you are always surrounded by opportunity because it is impossible to hide. If you are someone who can make a business money, they will find you.
Yeah.
Like, there's no GOAT NBA player that's not in the NBA. There's not some dude in the backwoods of Queensland who's just like Michael Jordan 2.0, but no one's heard of him. It's not happening.
Especially these days with social media.
Yeah. And so and you can. It's so easy to market yourself. You've done it brilliantly, and like I've done it on a smaller scale, and it's like all you have to do is say the things you're doing, and if you say the things you're doing for long enough, people can make a judgment of whether you're an idiot or whether you're good at what you do,
and either way.
Yeah.
They both make you money.
Exactly, right? The idiots, whatever, it's fine. People who hate on social media is fascinating to me. Because, like, I just can't imagine I just can't imagine being fucked. Could you imagine being fucked? Like, leaving, like, a negative comment?
I did a live last night, and 99.9% of the comments were great. But then you just get people in there who they just say the dumbest shit.
Yeah,
like,
it's amazing.
In short, it's like, fuck you.
Yeah.
It's like, bro, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Surely you got shit to be doing,
I know, right? I've started like I'll just like.
I've seen you recently replying to people.
I reply to people. Yeah, I'd be like, all right, you want to go? So some real estate agent in Queensland, right? Said he posted on my reel, "This is retarded," and I was like, oh. First of all, I love to see this kind of bullying coming back. I'm all about it. Second of all, game on, motherfucker. Let's see if you can last. So I went in and commented on like every photo. This is retarded, right? And I was like, I will not block you. I will not delete a comment. Say whatever you want. You can't say anything to me. I haven't said 6 inches in front of a mirror, motherfucker. Like, no one hates me more than me, right? So,
fuck, that's commitment.
It's like just But I like calling people out. And when I sell dialer, I'll be even worse.
The worst,
right? I'll be the worst, right?
Rich, arrogant, and good at sales.
Yeah, and then I think and. Sales it's a lot of fun, and then you can transition to things like property, and you can actually do things that build wealth, because income only gets you so far.
Yeah.
Like wealth building strategies are, I think it's one of the things that, like, when I speak to like young entrepreneurs the most, I'm like, what are you doing with your money? And they're like, oh, fucking Lambo. I'm like, here. Cool. Good luck with that, dude.
Because you got into real estate early, like you obviously went out of the house in Kenzo.
I bought an apartment, which is probably a mistake, but like I gave it a crack when I was like 22.
Right.
And fucking did nothing with it had it for years, sold it, and then made a bit of money, but nothing like significant.
Yeah.
And then bought a property in Perth, and then like I did that up. So well, no, like my cousin's a builder over there, so he sort of did some renovations.
Sales by day, tradie by night.
Yeah. Like, I mean, we rendered it and we modernized it, and we sort of did some renos inside, stuff like that. So we made a couple $100,000 on that. And so we sold that, and then we came over to Sydney, and it was like impossible to find a place. This is like sort of 2021 when it was like madness,
booming, like crazy.
Madness. And then we rented,
especially coming from Perth too, right? Like,
oh, dude, we lived in the Meriton for 4 months where we couldn't even get a rental. We were coming over here to buy. We couldn't buy anything or rent anything.
Dead set. Oh, Bondi Junction.
Dude, it was crazy.
Yeah, right.
So we ended up getting a place for rent in Wallara.
Yeah.
And then from there, went down, sold this house in Double Bay. They wanted way too much. They wanted like 10 mil for it. And I was like, no way. Like, no one's stupid enough to pay that. So we went to the auction and no one bid. So I went to the real estate agent. It was Delane, right? And I was like, I'll rent it. And she was like, what? And I was like, I'll rent it for 2 years and then sting me in 2 years, like just rail me. I'll be in love with the place. Just rail me like that. She was like, deal. So
Sales.
So rented it, and then like 6 months later, just started offering
As a tenant.
Yeah.
Didn't sell, you rented the property, then
Yeah, and I was like,
the old rent to buy arrangement.
Yeah, and I was like, I just started offering. I offered 8.7. They wanted 10. I was like 8.7, and they were like no, and I was like 8.7. No, I was like 8.7, and the guy was a Chinese buyer.
Right.
And this is when the Chinese government was hitting people into like camps and shit.
Not taking your cash out of the country.
Yeah. And I was like sending them emails of like fucking articles of people being taken and shit, right? And like eventually they said yes, and so bought it, and then we got an offer, like sort of having a look around because I know we got it at a decent deal,
right?
And then two houses on our street sold, and I was like, my houses are bigger than them. And I was like, so I called Delane. I was like, what do you reckon the house is worth? She was like, oh, I can get a buyer for that. She's like, what do you want? I was like, oh, if I can make $1 million, I'll be a happy man. She goes, like, leave it with me. And so, she was like, yep, sweet. She sold it in like fucking 4 days.
There you go. Now we're Kensington locals.
Yeah, well, not yet. So then we, and then I used that, and then when we're like looking all over, sort of, Randwick and Clovelly and fucking Bronte, and because like Double Bay is great, but fuck me, mate, this is a tax.
The double bay tax, right? Double pay. What do they say?
Yeah.
Double pay.
Yeah, and it's a great place to live, but like I work from home. I just sort of like do my thing, and my wife, like half her shit's over there anyway. So we're just like, oh man, like I could have less than half the mortgage, and I could have a bigger house with a pool and all that kind of stuff. So
less than 5Ks away, 6Ks away.
Yeah, exactly. So we were like, this seems like a really smart adult move.
Yeah.
Right. And so we did that, and then went through and put an offer on a house. And I feel sorry for these poor fucks that were bidding against us, because like I was talking to the agent, and I was like, mate, I'm buying a house, and he was like, what's your best and final? I was like, dude, just tell me when they come in best dressed, and then I'll beat it, and then we can be done with this. So it was an interesting situation, because these poor fuckers were like calling up their family and trying to get this an extra 20 grand. I said, mate, just tell them to stop. Like, they're not going to win. Just tell them, hey, the dude's got way more money than you. Just give up type thing.
The best negotiation strategy.
Yeah.
Have more money.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally.
I was like, putting an extra 200 in this house, mate, makes no difference to me. I was like, this is a significant financial downsize for me. It's half the price. And so I was like, I'm putting half of it in cash anyway. Like, what do I give a fuck? And so we bought the house, and then we move in like 5 or 6 months or something like that. But it's a beautiful house, big pool, really, really nice. Needs a reno. Needs like an outside reno, because it's got an ugly render on it. But it's a beautiful big house in a nice area, And like,
so you've always been in real estate in some facet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Most of my wealth is in like managed funds.
Yeah.
Just because like that's just how I did it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, to be honest, it's about 50-50.
Right.
Because if I think of the house as wealth, which it definitely is, having a $10 million house is probably considered wealth in some way, right? But yeah, and then so like I think. Do I think owning your own property in Sydney is the way to go? No. If I wasn't...
He's been following my content.
If I didn't have a wife and kids, I would rent 100%, and I would have investment properties, or have land or farmland or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And then I'd have a combination. But, it's crazy how, when you are good at sales, you sort of look at the world in a different way, because you could see something that you want to buy, like an investment opportunity, and you can go...
How many sales do I need to make?
I could fucking figure that out.
Yeah.
Like, I remember when I put the offer on the house, I was $1 million short on the Double Bay house. I was $1 million short cash for the settlement. And I was like, oh, I'll figure that out. I just was like, yeah, I'll figure that out. Easy. And so I think we had like a 4-month settlement, and I made $1 million cash.
Just through selling?
Yeah, just sold shit. I
think I remember you telling me that. You just went in an onslaught of, because you were selling big clients at
I was selling big, and I was just like, all I got to do is sell like 2 big ones and then a couple small ones. And I was like, I kind of broke it down that way. I was like, if I get a 500, I get a 250, then I get a couple hundos and a few 50s. I was like, I can make $1 million. I was like, there'll be a couple tax implications that I'll have to work out, but that's a 12-month problem.
That's right. That's next year. That's next financial year.
That's next financial year's problem. I was like, all I got to do, and then so I figured it out, put the money down, and and then we made $1 million profit in a year, tax free.
Which is the power of That's the power of
You can't
sales
do that
and real
else.
estate together.
Yeah, you can't do that anything else. And if you can do both, and like I use my sales to negotiate both of those. You know, like just to like, well, what happens if it doesn't sell? Like, what happens if I keep offering you and then I find another house? And you know, like, what happens if this guy?
Then you
know,
lose your tenant and your potential buyer.
Yeah, I was like, this is a problem. Surely it makes sense. And they were like, oh yeah, I'll present that to the owner. And you know, so sales is like just a unique ability to be able to get the things that you want most of the time, and then you can make money in any economic environment and then put that towards things that make you money. And if you do that right, fuck man, like you don't need to make money for very long.
It's a never-ending cycle as well, right?
Yeah.
That's the powerful thing about it.
Yeah. But like how much money do you need? Like if you have $10 million in cash flowing assets, like properly cash flowing assets, like how much money can you make from that? It's a good amount. Like you don't really have to work.
For most people, yeah. I guess the issue is that lifestyle creep, right?
Yeah, well if you're on a McLaren.
That's right. But the
dick, right?
The crazy thing is, and you're not like a one-off story here, right? Like so many people have gone from doing some shit average job that they earn average income in, then learning the skill of sales, then either going down the sales path all in, or they then start their own business. Yeah. And their financial future changes in a very, very short period of time. Yeah. And then if you use the income to then
it's crazy how fast you can make money. And when
if you're good at something.
Yes, and when you realize that money making is a skill, and money is a skill, and there's a learning to it, and you know, once you realize that there is a lot out there, like I mean, I live in Double Bay. Like I mean, fuck, the average taxpayer pays $285,000 in income tax. That's taxpayer income tax, not taxable income tax, right?
Which is like it's triple the average income in Australia.
Yes, and then you also have like 18-year-olds that are being cleared as taxpayers that are getting dad's money siphoned into them to mitigate the $38,000 of fucking tax-free money, like it does anything, right? But so people have got money, and there's a lot of money everywhere, and when you're in sales, you can just go and get it because there is always someone who wants to buy something,
and there is so much shit that happens that people don't realize, right? There is so many. At the moment, there's that narrative which is like the cost of living crisis and everything's so expensive, inflation, but like the reality is we both live in the eastern suburbs.
Yeah. I don't have a college degree. I was in the army.
But there's no cost of living crisis that when people have money, right? Like
yeah, exactly.
In these areas, regardless if it's right or wrong.
But it's also where you want to live. Like my life is harder because I live in Double Bay.
Yeah.
Like so I have to work more. So I am giving myself, like I'm not really, but you could say I'm giving myself a cost of living crisis because my mortgage is $45,000 a month.
Yeah.
Like I made that choice.
That's right. It could be $4,500.
I can't complain. I could go and live in Bankstown.
Yeah.
I could have no mortgage, just buy a place cash. Yeah, fucking love it. You know what I mean? But like, that's not what I chose. So if I make $100,000 a year, and I choose to live in Coogee, it seems like a fucking me problem, mate.
Very true.
Like, also, you can work from home in 99% of jobs now. Yeah. No one's forcing you to go to the city, and there's public transport. So like, move further out, and then work your way in. That's how it used to be. It used to be you bought in a shithole. It's just that now Paddington is no longer a shithole.
That's right.
It was 30 years ago. It was super dangerous. Like my father-in-law bought his first house in Paddington. It was a fucking dangerous suburb.
Can you believe people didn't want to live in Bondi before?
Yeah. I don't live there now. It's too many fucking motherfuckers, right? But
it's true. I say the same thing. It's like you have to act your wage, right?
Yeah.
Like, and the unfortunate reality is, in cities like Sydney, Brisbane, and Melbourne, the population is much more dense. Urban sprawl has happened. So where your parents grew up 50 years ago, you unfortunately can't grow up there now.
And when I was broke, I moved to Perth.
You made the sacrifice.
Like my wife didn't want to, and I went, hey, like the only way that I don't go insane is I have to figure out a way to live within my means, and I need a chance to build up. And if I'm this stressed about money, there's no way I build a good business. Yeah, because you can't build a good business when you're stressing about cash.
Because you're worrying about everything else.
You're just thinking about short term, and you never go long term. And so I was like, we need to move, and we made the sacrifice, and we stayed there for a bit over a year. And the moment we had enough money to come back here and live very comfortably, we did.
And I think that I mean, it's not just business focused, but like buying property is exactly the same thing. It's like if you make that short-term sacrifice, literally for 12 months. Yeah. It's not even a sacrifice. You're just having a change of lifestyle for 12 months.
Yeah, and like, you go
and save some money and then come back. And
and for what, And like, it's one of the reasons why we're moving is because, we made money. And so it's like, as much as I like saying, I live in Double Bay, because there is an ego feeling to that.
Status, yeah.
Like, mate, you know what not paying a $45,000 a month mortgage will feel like? A lot better than saying I live in Double Bay. I can give you the red hot tip.
It's true.
Because, like, I make plenty of money, but fuck me, I could keep a lot more of it if I lived somewhere else.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's no way that the capital growth of that house will outweigh what I can do in my business with that money.
With the cash flow.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Because, like, my return on capital employed is like 300x on my business. You know? And so you can't beat that. And I'm good at sales. And if I put that money into getting people to talk to me about my business, I make that, you know, 100-fold over what I do in property at the moment.
And the current business now that you've transitioned into is Dialer.io.
Yeah, it's software, yeah.
Yeah, which is essentially like a dialing system.
Yep.
That you have extremely high connect rates
Yeah.
based on the model that you use.
Yeah, so we have a lot of things, and I've caught a lot of leads in my day, and so we're sick of the sort of solutions that were out there because I knew they were just a bit subpar. And so figured out a way to kind of, you know, use a lot of different things and a bit of knowledge to crack the code. Started a call center because I knew that I didn't want to pay to dev the whole thing. So we started a call center, and that was kind of a way of, we problem solved the dialer for 9 months before actual public launch.
Right.
Through a call center. Like, call center did $300K month one. Right. So that was
just calling someone else's leads.
Yeah. And that was like, I knew that I could get that. I knew that I could fill that out. We had 40 clients before we even started.
Right.
And then that 100% of that money went into dev,
which is building the software.
Yeah. And so we didn't need a front end. We just had a back end, and it didn't work. So we were like having to problem solve. And after 9 months, we had a good product. I sold the call center, put that money back into the dialer, and then, you know, we've been doing it for 18 months now, but we only launched the dialer 5 months ago.
Yeah, I was going to say it didn't feel like 18 months. And 5 months.
Yeah, the dialer is 5 months ago. So it was like December.
Yeah.
And we've done over $1 million so far. Profitable, SaaS, $1 million, 5 months. So we're at like $400,000 a month recurring.
Solid.
Something like that in 5 months with no ad spend. So
just
we should sell in 3 years for a couple $100 million.
That's the goal, huh?
Yeah.
Sales. All starts with sales.
Mate, without sales, it'd be fucked.
Before we wrap, if you're someone now getting started, whether in real estate, whether you're a fucking car salesman, you're doing outbound calls, which is usually where salespeople start. They start on shit leads, outbound calls.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
What are like the 3 to 5 key metrics that they need to be tracking daily, like you were when you started?
Yeah, I would say you need to know, you work your way backwards, right? So you go, how much money do I want to make? How many sales does that constitute? And you can't go pie in the sky. To get that many sales, how many people do I need to pitch? To get that many pitches, how many people do I need to speak to? And then to speak to that many people, what do I have to do? So if it's calling leads, if it's, walking the lot and going like, I have to approach 15 people a day. When I was a PT, I had a KPI to myself of how many people I had to cold approach at the gym, because I knew that I would get told to fuck off, or people like, huh? Or that, and then there's only so many guys I could say had a small chest and they would actually like respond to it. Your chest should be bigger than that, right?
That's the sociopath.
Exactly. And then just be diligent, and then stay there until you hit it. That's the key, because you have to hit it, and don't accept not. Like, just stay there. Like, if it means that you stay at the lot until 10 p.m. and you're fucking shouting at people, you're on my car? Like, just do it, because you have to become the person that does it.
Yeah.
And like, once you do that, then you realize, oh, it's actually not very difficult. Most people are fucking lazy.
As soon as you do it, yeah. It's the same as KPIs inside of the business. As soon as you hit the KPI in a month, you're like, oh, fuck, that wasn't that hard. And we know what we have to do there. Then you set the next KPI.
And then you just keep doing that. And then it becomes the habit and how you do things. And, once you start acting as a very successful person, I don't mean like fucking buying Rolexes in first class, but once you act as a person, like, then you have to be it. If you want to be a triathlete, you have to go running, swimming, and riding. If you don't do that, you're never going to be a triathlete. So
mental masturbation.
Exactly. And real masturbation. That's key, right? Twice a day, every day, right?
Gotta get those numbers up.
Exactly.
Matt Ryder. Thank you, brother. That was awesome.
Thanks, dude.
Appreciate it.